All of us reach a point in time where we are depleted and need to somehow find a way to reignite the fire within. But how do we spark that flame? Welcome to Reignite Resilience, where we will venture into the heart of the human spirit. We'll discuss the art of reigniting our passion and strategies to stoke our enthusiasm. And now, here are your hosts, Natalie Davis and Pamela Cass.
Welcome back to another episode of Reignite Resilience. I am your co-host, Natalie Davis, and I'm so excited to be back with all of you today. And joining me, of course, is your co-host, Pam Cass. Hello, Pam. How are you?
I am fantastic. Now that I've figured out that it's Tuesday, I think I'm good. I'm good for the week.
Which you may have just learned moments ago.
Just moments ago. It's been a nail biter all day. What day am I showing up?
What day is it? Exactly. I feel that we came into 2026, we the collective, into 2026 just at 100 miles an hour, and it has been nonstop. And now we've looked up and here we are in February. I can't believe it.
Yeah, I kind of have felt the same way. I don't know what happened. I blinked and here we are.
And here we are. That's okay. We'll be doing some check-ins with our folks on resolutions and goals and things like that. Because, when you're 45 days past setting those goals and resolutions, we like to hear how they're going. So
absolutely.
Anyway.
Absolutely.
Well, we have a special guest that's joining us today, and I'm going to turn it over to you, Pam. Why don't you tell our listeners who's joining us?
Absolutely. Super excited about today's guest. So we have Charles Cadet. He is an architect of the Predictable Profits Operating System, a proprietary methodology that has helped hundreds of 7- and 8-figure businesses escape the feast or famine cycle and create predictable revenue streams. As founder and CEO of Predictable Profits, he specializes in helping established companies achieve consistent month-over-month growth. Perfect topic for this time of year. Welcome, Charles. It's such a great honor to have you with us today. And gosh, I'm going to throw it to you to kind of share a little bit about your story, because you've got a story before you started all of this amazing stuff that you're doing today.
Sure. Awesome. Well, it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me. So I started my first business at the age of 4 and never had a traditional, quote unquote, real job. After graduating college, I started a business then nominated by Ernst & Young as being one of the nation's best seed stage companies, and created my first multi-million-dollar business at the age of 24. After that, I continued to build and grow a number of different companies until 2010. That's when somebody offered to pay me to help them grow their business, and I started Predictable Profits. Through the years of working with clients, we've done some pretty remarkable things, and it got the attention of the media. And as such, the International Business Times did a featured story on me, calling me the go-to business coach for 7- and 8-figure companies. MSN just a few weeks ago named me the leading business coach for 8- and 9-figure CEOs. DM News named me the number 1 thought leader for marketing and sales in 2025. And then I can go on and on and on. But the reality is it actually has nothing to do with me. I'm just benefiting from being the CEO of the company. It really has everything to do with what you mentioned, the Predictable Profits Operating System. And I'd be remiss if I didn't give a hat tip to my team, who really is credited with so much of the results that we've been able to generate. But people are coming to us and they're asking usually one of 3 questions. They're saying, look, what's it going to take to grow my company faster? Or maybe they say, look, some months are feast, some months are famine. How do we bring more predictability into the revenue? Or the third one is a company is far too dependent on me. How do we scale? And that brings me to where I am today.
That's amazing.
So you've been an entrepreneur since you were 4.
Since I was 4. Though some people think that you're either born an entrepreneur, or a lot of people think maybe you're born an entrepreneur. That actually wasn't the case. Maybe it's the case for a lot of people. It just wasn't the case for me. So I really didn't get to know my dad until the 3rd grade, because my dad was a business owner and he worked every waking hour of every day, 7 days a week. So I'd get up in the morning and dad already went to work. I would go to bed and then dad would come home, if he came home, because sometimes he actually just slept at work. And so I really didn't get to know him. But when I did see him, he would say, kid, if you ever want to make something of yourself, you got to be a business owner. And so all I wanted to do is get my dad's approval and get my dad's love and so forth. So I wanted to show him that I could do it. And so I just started creating artwork and selling it to my neighbors. And then I showed my dad what I did and he was proud. And so I'm like, okay, I got what I was hoping for.
Yes.
And then I just continued down that journey, and it was a blessing because it's ultimately what I feel I was made for. But if it wasn't for that event, I don't know that I actually would have done it at least that early.
Right.
Wow.
That's amazing.
That's awesome.
And so then you step into your own journey as an entrepreneur and building your business. I mean, like, if you're not born, then what? What is your secret sauce then, Charles? What prompted you to go down that path?
Well, there's always been lessons across the way. And I know you and I spoke a little bit about adversity and so forth. And there's multiple points of adversity and multiple paths that I've gone down that have been dark where I feel like hit rock bottom. And I'm happy to explore that if you want to, later. But the first part of the adversity was actually when you're 4 and you're selling artwork to the neighbors, most neighbors are like, you're looking for 50 cents, no problem. Here's 50 cents. They grab the artwork. And as soon as the door closes, they're throwing it away, right? It's just, they're trying to be nice, except for Mrs. Hersey. Wonderful woman. She's a great person. But Mrs. Hersey actually taught me a lesson that later added millions of dollars to my bottom line. And I gave Mrs. Hersey my artwork, and she looked at this and she goes, "Charlie, is that really the best you could do?" Ooh. And I could feel, still as I think about it, I could feel the blood rushing into my face. I could remember I could feel my heartbeat in my face. I was so mortified and embarrassed. And I was honest with her. And I was like, no. And she said, "Why would you sell me something that wasn't the best that you could do? It looks like scribbles." And I was like that hurt, but she was right, which is why it hurt. Usually it doesn't hurt if it's not right.
Right.
But because I knew it was right, it hurt. And she said, "I will give you 3 cents, 2 or 3 cents, something like that for that, because that's all I think it's worth." And so I took the money. She was the last sale I made that day because I couldn't sell anybody else scribbles. And I learned from that moment, I never wanted to feel like that again. So I would never, from that point on, sell anybody scribbles. And so after that, I always made sure that what I did would deliver value in some way so that nobody could ever ask me, "Is that really the best you could do?" And so it was a really important lesson early on that felt hard and tough, but little did she know it was one of the most valuable lessons she could have given me.
Wow.
Awesome. Shout out to Mrs. Hersey. That's great.
Yeah.
Yes.
Great.
I don't know I don't know if she's ever known that, but it's a great thing.
But a powerful lesson that you carried with you throughout life, right? When you're looking at it, if you can deliver better quality, better, higher level of service, what have you, you know that there's something else you're going to strive to deliver that versus the scribbles.
You're right. And, I think this is where there's opportunities that many people miss. And you're going to get people get 2 different reactions when they're faced with that type of feedback. You're going to get some people that almost like push the blame, deflect the blame over to that person. The typical person, if you think about it, when getting that feedback, they'd be like, "What does she know? What a bitch, this and that." And they just, instead of taking a moment and say, "Why is that the best thing that could happen for me right now?" And I was very fortunate in that was the direction that I went, is understanding like, why did this happen for me? Now, I didn't consciously connect it that way. I just reacted that way. Now with my team and whatnot, I'm constantly asking them when something happens, regardless of what happens, why is this the best thing that could happen for us right now? When 2020 happened and the world was shut down, with our clients, there's a reason why 87% of our clients had the best year they'd ever had. And it doesn't matter the industry, restaurant, travel, doesn't matter. I'd ask them, "Why is this the best thing that could happen for you right now?" Most of them looked at me like I had 2 heads and smoking the wacky tobacco, but it didn't matter because once they finally got to the answer, we could begin to formulate solutions. And science is there that shows that everything, all the way down to the smallest observable molecule, there's a positive and negative energy. It's always that way. And it doesn't even matter. Everything that exists, economies go up and down. Yesterday's rainforests or today's deserts, and you name it, like all the way across the board, there's always positive and negatives, and they always happen. And so when we look at a negative, we ask, well, could this be the best thing to happen for us? And then it opens your eyes to possibilities instead of the other way, which is you close the door and you just feed into more problems.
Yeah. You settle into being a victim.
Yeah. Well, we see that so much with a lot of our guests that have had incredible adversity happen in their lives. And every single one of them has taken that and found some sort of purpose in it, which is moving forward, which is perfect.
Let's take a quick break.
Hey there, Reignite Resilience listeners. I've got some exciting news that I cannot wait to share with you. We have just launched our brand new weekly Think Letter, and it is packed with powerful insights to fuel your journey towards unshakable resilience. Now, picture this. Each week, you'll receive a daily dose of inspiration, practical strategies, and thought-provoking ideas directly in your inbox. It's like having a personal resilience coach right at your fingertips. And we've designed this Think Letter to be your go-to resource for cutting-edge research, real-life stories, and actionable tips that you can apply. So head on over to reigniteresilience.com and sign up for the Think Letter today. Now, let's dive back into today's episode.
Most people, when you look at their success and you trail it back, they can oftentimes trail it back to a moment of despair or challenge, or several moments, not just one, of despair or challenge that force them either to make a decision or brought them on a journey that got them to meet somebody else, or whatever happens, that if none of that happened, they never would have got to the place they're at right now. So if you think about like the stock market, right? The stock market, and I used to own a company and we traded millions of dollars in the market. So, and I designed all these algorithms. And so there's what's called support and resistance, right? So support is when the stock starts to come down and it hits this level of support, meaning like, it's kind of holding you stable, but eventually you might fall below support and you don't really want to do that. And resistance means you start breaking a new high, but something kind of is stopping you. Like it's feeling very difficult. The way that I look at things now is when I feel like things are getting harder or I'm getting hit with different challenges in some wackadoodle way that at least keeps me sane, I start to celebrate and be thankful because I'm like, this is great. I'm getting closer to a new high. This resistance exists because I'm getting closer to that next breakthrough. And so
I love that.
Mindset is a funny thing, but without the right mindset, you're going to miss the opportunities that are in front of you right now.
Well, and I think a lot of people will stop or quit when they start to feel that resistance instead of pushing through it and seeing that, oh my gosh, something's going to happen. There's this momentum that's been created. I got to keep moving.
Well, if you look at the problems that you're both faced with today, you're both successful in your own right today. If you look at the problems that you're dealing with today, even the biggest problems, like they probably feel really, really tough. And that's okay. Because if you think about the problems that you were faced with even 5 years ago, those problems felt really, really hard. But today, when you look at the problems 5 years ago, you're like, I can't even believe I worried about that. I can't believe that I lost sleep over that. Because what it's done is it built that muscle to allow you to handle the problems that you're faced with today. Similarly, 5 years from now, you're going to look at the problems that you're dealing with right now, and you're going to be like, gosh, that's so funny. I was so worried about it. But now it's like, I'm there. But if you were given the problems for 5 years from now, if you were given that problem today, you wouldn't be equipped to handle it. You haven't built, so the more problems you have, it actually builds that muscle and that resilience to train you to handle bigger problems. Between my wife and I, we invested $250,000 with Tony Robbins just to be able to kind of travel the world and learn from him and so forth. And I'm up in Whistler, Canada, and I'm with Tony, and he says to me, what's the biggest problem you're faced with right now? So I kind of shared some different things. And he goes, now, who's your professional role model again? I go, Richard Branson. He goes, do you think Richard Branson would lose like 0.1 seconds of sleep over the problems you're dealing with right now? And I'm like, yeah, probably not. And I'm like, why do you ask? And he says, I'm sizing you up. I said, what does that mean? And he says, you see, over the years, I learned that big people have big problems. Little people have little problems. Little people run away from their problems, but big people will create big problems for themselves. And that's a big distinction. They create big problems. So, that's often, when we look at the different problems, like, are you creating a big problem? Like, look, love him or hate him, it doesn't matter. It's just the first example that comes to mind. You think of like Elon Musk, he says, I'm going to colonize Mars. That's a big problem that he created. And most people think that he's out of his freaking mind.
Yeah, it was not on no one else's radar, like not on anyone's radar.
Nobody. But he created that big problem. And a lot of, if you look at those, the most successful people in the world, they're constantly putting them out there and constantly creating big problems. Mother Teresa had a big problem. She's like, I want to, end hunger and do all this stuff. She created that big problem. Dalai Lama, I want to bring peace to the world. And he created big problems.
Charles, like thinking about your own journey, because I have to go back to you being a 20-something running and operating this multi-million-dollar company and business. And so in your own journey, you obviously, I'm assuming, wouldn't arrive to where you are today then when you were in your 20s. Talk to us a little bit about that time, because that season of life, we've talked about mindset. We've talked about like the habits that we have to have and how you're showing up. Where are you in your early 20s to find yourself in this space of success?
Well, it even started before that, actually. When I was in grammar school, I believe it was grammar school when this happened, my mom got me tested for learning disabilities. Now, she got me tested for learning disabilities because she was like, with all this fear of the draft and everything else, she's like, if he has learning disabilities, then maybe he won't get drafted. And, she didn't really know what was going on, but this is kind of like, so, because back then when I was a kid, they were talking about Russia and the Cold War and everything else. And, mom was afraid. Well, she gets me tested and I happened to I don't know what was going through the doctor's mind. Honestly, this is complete, it just idiocy from the doctor's standpoint. But I'm standing on the other side of the room. My mother's sitting on the couch and the doctor's talking to her. And she says, your son has one of the worst cases of learning disabilities that I've ever seen. And she said, and furthermore, I'm not even sure how he can function in a regular school. Now, when you're a kid and you hear that instantly just, the stories that are in your head just run rampant. And so I get in the car on the way home and I'm totally quiet, man. I don't say anything. And in my mind, I'm thinking, great, doctor just told me I'm dumb. Doctor told me I'm stupid. And I was really upset by that. I knew in school that I couldn't do things the way that other kids did. I could never really learn in a traditional classroom. I always felt like I was a little bit slower than everybody else when it came to learning different things. And so I knew things were different, but that was more confirming. And now I'm assuming, I'm dumb. I'm not even supposed to be in a traditional school. And then my mom said something to me, and I will never ask her if this is the truth, ever. Because I don't want to know the truth, because it's the story that I've continued to rely on the whole way. But she said, hey, you seem a little upset. I don't think you heard everything the doctor said. I said, well, what are you talking about? She said, you notice how you actually do well in school? And I'm like, yeah. I did do well in school. I'm like, yeah. She goes, the doctor said you had one of the highest IQs that she's ever seen. You're extremely gifted and talented, which is why you've been able to teach yourself how to go through school. And she said, so your brain just works differently, but you've got a gift. And my energy changed immediately. And I was like, wow. And, so that's a story that I've carried myself with, right? And so when I think about the different things that go on and how hard certain things are, even to this day, I'm 48 years old, and every day I'm managing my own learning disabilities. But in the back of my mind, I'm going, my brain works different than everybody else. And it's been a gift, which is why I'm as successful as I am today because of that. And I've got almost every form of dyslexia except for seeing things backwards. I didn't know there were multiple forms, but apparently there are, aside from seeing things backwards. And very literally, I've left my luggage behind at the airport 6 times because the moment my brain just starts thinking about something, everything else, shuts off.
Yeah. Unless you want your luggage, but then.
And that's not my luggage. I'm the only guy that you probably know that is actually, when I get home and I realize I have all my luggage, I'm like, I'm expecting a big round standing ovation when I walk in the door and I'm like, honey, look at it, I still got the bags. But they all think I'm nuts.
Oh my gosh. Charles, that does answer something for me, because I've always wondered, who are the people that forget their luggage on the conveyor belt? I'm like, how do you go home without remembering to get your luggage? Charles. And now that is solved for me. So thank you for for giving me
I've left it at TSA. I've literally put it right on the TSA belt, and I walked through security and just kept going. And, I boarded the plane, and then I'm like, oh, shoot.
Wait, where's the bag?
What happened?
Charles, we had a guest once that literally had his entire face on the side of his suitcase. Maybe if you had that, people would be like, hey, I think you forgot your bag.
Yes.
My wife put an air tag in my bag now so that when I do lose it, I actually can locate where I lost it at.
Exactly.
Oh my gosh, that is hilarious. So it's amazing me the power of just those words completely shifted your trajectory, really. If she hadn't said that to you, you would have run that story through your head that you were dumb and that you couldn't even get through school. And yet here you were, you had gotten through school. You had taught yourself how to do it.
Yeah. And I turned that story into, why is this the best thing for me? Right. And now when I look at it, the reason why people pay me to do the things that I do is because my brain doesn't work the same way everybody else's does. So I see opportunities that other people can't see because it's just, it works differently. So it's become my superpower. Now, every superhero has a kryptonite. So, I do have my kryptonite that comes with it, but I've managed to work with it.
And you've built a team that supports it.
Which is exactly right.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Incredible.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
Now, you asked about my 20-year-old self.
Yes.
So my dad told me the secret to success was hard work. And then he would also say, the early bird gets the worm. So I take things very literally sometimes. And I'm like, all right, got it. Nobody's going to outwork me. And if the early bird gets a worm, then I'm going to make sure that I'm the earliest bird there. I would set my alarm for 3:30 in the morning so I wouldn't, quote unquote, oversleep. Work 7 days a week. And if I happened to get up around midnight to go to the bathroom, I would force myself to stay awake and I would start working at midnight and I would work until I could no longer keep my eyes open, which oftentimes would be, maybe 7, 8 o'clock at night where my brain would just shut down and then I'd have a couple hours before I went back to bed again. But I did this nonstop. And at the time, and this is in my 20s, I was in over $1 million in debt. So, and way back when, that's the equivalent of several $1 million, right? And I'm paying double-digit interest rates on this money. And so, I'm like, I don't know how I'm going to ever be able to pay this back, but I'll find a way. And hard work, I thought, was my answer. Then I'm driving home one day from work and I see my house over across the hood of my vehicle on the left-hand side of the road. And I see the house. And in that moment, I realized I'm not going home today. I felt the shooting pain from the base of my spine all the way up into my brain. I didn't understand what was going on, but wasn't long before I was on my back in the emergency room. And the doctor says my organs are shutting down and I'm dying. And I'm like, but what? What's happening? I was so exhausted and under so much stress and I wasn't eating right. And the whole deal that everything just, your body can only take so much. And fortunately, obviously, I survived. But it was on that drive home, my wife is driving and I'm thinking to myself, man, I don't understand. I mean, I'm doing everything I was supposed to do. And at the same time, I feel like everybody around me is making more money. Like, what is happening right now? And that's when I changed my approach. I changed the way that I had to work to grow business and created more leverage and actually was more use strategy instead of hard work. And it was within a year of that time that I paid back all of my debt and created my first multi-million-dollar business. So much so that I hired an accounting firm, a big accounting firm out of Boston. The principal of the accounting firm showed up at my house completely unannounced, knocked on the door. I opened it. He said hi and let himself in and then walked right into my breakfast table and sat there and was like, we need to talk. And I'm going, oh God, what's happening? He says, I don't understand what happened. All the numbers line up. It's all, fair market value and the whole deal. But you have one of the highest profit margins in the entire industry. What are you doing and is it legal? And I'm like,
oh, yeah.
So I just, realized that what we did actually worked. And again, it was one of those things because the way that I do things is a little bit differently. I just thought everybody did it this way. And he's the one who told me, God, that's amazing. Nobody does that. And I'm like,
it's different.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Okay.
Wow.
So how hard was it to go from working 7 days a week, pretty much no sleep, not eating well, and making that shift because that had become your identity?
Oh, that's a really good question. We do things, as Tony Robbins likes to say, we either do things out of inspiration or desperation. At that point, I didn't have a choice, right? It was more desperation. So it was less more of an identity shift. It was more of like, well, how else am I supposed to do this? Right. So it's more of like a way of thinking, a shift in my approach. And so, that's what happened and brought me to, again, it's like every hard moment, I can go back and say, well, if that didn't happen, then this wouldn't have happened. Right. And we talked earlier about, I said, hitting rock bottom. And when people tell me, oh, I'm hit rock bottom, I know if they've hit rock bottom and if they haven't, from only one thing in my view determines if you're at rock bottom or not.
Okay.
When you no longer want to be on this earth, you're at rock bottom. If you're not at that point, you're not rock bottom. And there was that point where I wasn't going to do anything myself. I wasn't going to hurt myself. But I do remember sitting in the car on the road saying a prayer that somebody would take me out, that somebody would just hit me head on and then take me out. But that was almost like the last day of hitting rock bottom is that moment. And it was almost like I hit it and then I started to bounce and then things started to turn around. And then the weird thing is nobody told me this, it just started happening. And I would randomly catch myself saying thank you to who or what, I don't know, but saying thank you for the position that I was in. And it was like it was happening, but I didn't know it was happening until I consciously was like, what am I saying thank you for this? This is like, what are you, nuts? But then things started to line up. And now I'm more conscious about it. Now, when I get in those periods of difficulty, I'll say thank you. And I don't know what I'm thanking or who I'm thanking, or I don't know what I'm being thankful for. But all I've learned is through a lot of adversity throughout my life that it's going to serve as a higher purpose. And so then I just am grateful. Gratitude has become my superpower, one of my superpowers.
Yeah.
That's something that comes up quite a bit with a lot of our guests and just even discussion on the podcast is being able to find gratitude in all things. And I think it's more challenging to do so when you're approaching rock bottom or have hit rock bottom, still being able to recognize that you have so much to be grateful for and then figuring out for me, what's the blessing in all of this? Why is this taking place? And how can it be of value and help me improve? That's huge.
We talked about the learning disabilities and whatnot. Even something as simple as like, you probably see me every once in a while taking little swigs of this stuff here, Founders Fuel.
Yeah. Tell us about it.
One of the guys that I hired, his name is Reagan Archibald out of Utah. He got his grad degree in herbal medicine. He's a functional medicine expert and whatnot. And I hired him and I said, I need you to make me superhuman. I want to manage my brain and I get paid for my ability to think. And it's, something that, and so Reagan, we tried a whole bunch of different supplements and everything. I felt like nothing was good enough. Like, what could we do? And then Reagan formulated this stuff called Founders Fuel. And Founders Fuel by itself, it's the most powerful focus supplement I've ever used in my life. The founder of Planet Fitness even said it's the best thing that he's ever tried. But it's like, I wouldn't have had this, which now, this is just an accidental company that we created. Because once he gave it to me and I gave it to a few friends, they're like, this is crazy. Like,
Yeah.
But this would never have come if it wasn't for the learning disabilities, right? Predictable profits would have never have happened if it wasn't for somebody saying, hey, can you help me grow my company? Right? Like so much of what we've done. And so I own a portfolio of commercial properties. I never would have done that if my father hadn't passed and I was forced to acquire these properties because my mother nobody was buying them. She couldn't sell it and she couldn't manage them. And then it just got to a point where somebody had to step in. And so I bought them. So everything came after a period of challenge and adversity.
It's all the ripple effects of our lives that we can focus on the negative stuff. But if we look at the web of the beautiful things that come out of all of those negative things, it's incredible.
The hardest, I hope I can get through this without crying, but the hardest period for me, the biggest test of everything that I'm telling you, to see that if it actually was the truth, if I am living my truth, if everything that I said was honest, was when my dad died about 3 years ago. Hardest in my life. And put myself in my office and I said, I'm not leaving until I can be grateful for what happened. How can you be grateful for that? So hard. And I didn't know. I kept repeating gratitude and I kept saying to myself, there's a reason this happened. And then I made up a story. that just worked for me. Sometimes you have to do that. And I said, you know what? Maybe he passed for us, me and my siblings and my mom. Maybe through that, something greater will happen. A door will open because of what happened. I was in my office for a long time, as you can imagine. But then as time passed, I was on the phone with my siblings, and my siblings, they said, I feel like he did this for us. And I was like, damn, there's the answer. Again, it's like, I don't know any of this to be true, but it's my truth. Sometimes you just have to go with what is your truth. If the results work and it helps you get further, and it only adds value, and there's only good things that come of it. Okay, cool. So people are going to tell me that I'm smoking the wacky tobacco and that it's that I'm crazy, but it works for me. So I don't care.
Gratitude works for everyone when they're going through adversity, and you allowed yourself the space to feel what you were feeling until you came to the gratitude from it.
It was tough.
I was just going to say that it's a tough one.
Yeah. That was the biggest test, and hopefully the biggest one I'll ever have to face. But the biggest test to see, am I really living my truth?
Well, I think that's where you get to use that as the testament, because that only comes through when you are going through these adversities, right? Like, we're able to see it. I know it was challenging as you were going through it, but we're able to see it on the other side of, it's not just from practical practice, like it's actual application that you have in your life, and it's what you're following so that you can be the example for other people. That's huge in itself. And, kudos to you for being able to come full circle and find the things to be grateful for in it.
Every once in a while, a squirrel gets a nut, right?
Yes.
And then there's humor.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Well, Charles, predictable profits. Like, I feel like that's such a bold, you talk about coming out of the gate like, hey, predictable profits, like, here we go. Let's make it happen. And being able to help other people in their businesses. Talk to us a little bit about that, the formation and growth of the company over the years.
Yeah. So originally it was all about like, how do I help people grow faster? Right. And so it was all about like bringing speed in the equation. But fast growth and predictable growth are two different strategies, right? So if you look at the actual data, you'll see that 66% of the fastest growing companies that are listed on the Inc. 5000 within 5 to 8 years of getting listed will shrink in size, go out of business, or be disadvantageously sold. And that was a study performed by the Kauffman Foundation. So again, growth strategies and predictable strategies are totally different. And I learned that for the companies that we are growing, the ones that were able to withstand any economic condition and storm that they were faced with, and nowadays it's not even economic, it's technology, it's everything, right? Because AI is a massive disruptor. Everybody's been disrupted, everyone already. They just don't know. And that's an interesting topic in and of itself. But it is that they followed a very specific formula. And that's where the predictable profits operating system came into play, because we started looking at, well, how are some of these, what do we do? Like, what is the consistency? What is the consistent pattern among the most successful clients that we've grown and the ones that continue to stay on the growth path? And so we started, documented this framework and putting people through this. But at the very base of everything, at the very start of everything, is what we call setup. People think I do marketing, right? But you can't do marketing. Nobody does marketing. It's impossible to do marketing. It's like me saying I can be doctor. I had this conversation with the CEO of a $500 million company, and I'm like, yeah, you can't do marketing. And he was like, what? And I go, it's a function. It's a function of how you create, capture, and nurture demand. So let me ask you, how effectively are you at creating demand? And I don't know. I go, what about capturing that demand? Oh yeah, X amount of thousands of leads per day. Got it. What about nurturing that demand? How effective are you at that? It's like, I don't know. So 2/3 of your entire marketing function are operating in the dark. So let's shine some light on that. And then when you have that setup and the setup is strong, you're creating buyer-ready leads into sales, right? So for most of these organizations, the biggest challenge that they're faced with is that the bedrock of the company, that setup, is not strong enough. And where today's buyer are researchers. So they went from, in 2019, looking at 17 different sources of information before making a buying decision. In 2021, that went up to 27. Last year, it's estimated around 36. Grabbing their attention and showing them what makes you uniquely different than your competitors. If you're not clearly articulating your credibility and your magic sauce for how you're able to deliver results that the other people can't do and so forth, if you're not doing any of that, then you're going to get passed up and somebody else. So, that's sort of like, and we can go much deeper into that, but that's sort of like the very basis is understanding that there are two different strategies, predictable and then, those fast growth. And so, that's what we've been focusing in on. And we've helped both 6, 7, and 8-figure companies just get on that path and continue. And it's been fun. And people ask me all the time, like, what keeps me up at night, right? And I'm like, the part that actually keeps me up at night is the same thing that I love. There's no differentiation. And they're like, I don't get it. What is it? And I'm like, I just so happen to work with some of the greatest entrepreneurs on the planet. And things are moving so fast that I feel I need to be able to have those answers to make sure that when they're engaging with us, that the time that they're investing with us is the best use of their time all day, all week, all year. Only way that I can do that is be able to continue to provide an edge. But things are moving so fast. Sometimes what's happening in the morning has been changed by evening, right? So that part right there is the most exciting, but also what keeps me up at night.
I can't imagine that either. No. Exactly. Just staying ahead of that. And Pam and I actually had this conversation yesterday, just in terms of really keeping the engagement for high performing, high producing individuals, right? Like they need to make sure that the investment that they're making in themselves, they know that that's important, but is there going to be value as they continue to work with you? So that's the piece that you talk about. Like, how can I stay ahead of that to ensure that I'm constantly delivering value for them to trust me, keep coming back? And
well, if you think about the both of you, right? Like, let's say we work together. The investment in what you would pay me is chump change, is peanuts to you, considered to the value of your time. And so for you, it's if I'm going to spend an hour engage with predictable profits, this hour better be a higher, better use of my time than if I was going to spend it in any other activity that you might be spending it to grow the business, right? So, it's understanding that dynamic and what needs to happen. That is, everybody puts value on something else. In the expert business, that's what we have to put value on. But if you are in, in other business, it would be, what do your clients value more than the money that they're spending with you? And when you can understand that it's way more than the value, it's, let's say you were selling TVs. Like, it's not the money in the TV. If you're selling it to, say, a guy, it might be like, I want my friends to come over in the football game and look at this TV and be like, this guy is awesome. And, blah, blah, blah. It says a lot about like Starbucks. Like, the value in the Starbucks is what it says about me walking around in the airport or whatever, that I have a Starbucks. Because if somebody says, oh, that doesn't matter, then it's like, well, let me actually put that same content of coffee and I'm going to put it into like a Kmart cup, branded Kmart. And why don't you walk around and, and see if you still feel the same way?
It does not feel the same.
No.
It doesn't feel the same. No. Right. But there's that, that exchange.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you for joining us today on the Reignite Resilience podcast. We hope you had some aha moments and learned a few new real-life ideas to fuel the flames of passion. Please subscribe on your favorite streaming platform, like or download your favorite episodes, and of course, share with your friends and family. We look forward to seeing you again next time on Reignite Resilience.